I'm so excited to welcome our speaker today. Sophia is from Jack and Jill. Raise your hand. Who's heard of Jack and Jill? Is anyone familiar? I can see we've got some tentative hands. We've got some more of those wild thumbs that go bananas on Zoom. It's a bit overstimulating, if I'm honest. But that's okay. Sophia is here to talk to us about how generalists get hired in 2026. And our other summer school sessions, if you've been to them or if you're going to come to them, are kind of quite tool focused. Where this one is going to be, we were thinking of it like a hotline, kind of like a career hotline. So it's going to be very collaborative. Edja is going to be compiling all of your questions, and we're kind of going to like moderate the questions throughout. And if we have time, hopefully we can do a little demo of the Jack and Jill platform as well, if you haven't come across it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sophia.
Thank you, Millie. And wow, it's amazing to see so many people here. 365. I don't think I've ever spoken to that many people virtually on a Zoom before. Really excited to be here doing the career hotline, as Millie said. You'll have to bear with me, guys. I lost my voice and it's not from partying, unfortunately. I wish it was. But hopefully my voice doesn't give up on me today and I can make it to the end. Um, the objectives of today and kind of the three things we'll go through is we'll start with a bit about me and my career and how I went from a very generalist, non-technical humanities background to joining a very technical AI startup and my advice from that career pivot. Um, I'm very, very like more than willing to just answer questions there and hear what's helpful to learn more about. I will share a guide that I've written up that helped me frame my value and my experiences to founders. We'll then look at an agent you can use to find jobs like I found mine, and a bit more on that to come. And then we'll end with the career hotline where you can ask me and you can ask an agent on a call for career advice. And we will like go through problems and think together how to approach it so that everyone can find ultimately what we're all looking for, which is like work that is life fulfilling and work that you're passionate about. So that was a bit of an intro. Millie, does that help set the scene?
Sounds amazing. Yeah, do you want to tell us a bit about how you did get your job at Jack and Jill? How did that come about?
Yeah, I'll rewind a bit. So I studied history and politics at Cambridge and just loved politics. I wanted to work in government. I had an offer for the civil service. And then COVID hit, which also reveals my age. But when COVID hit and I was bored at home in lockdown, I decided to found a dating app for groups to meet other groups out of the loneliness of the pandemic and going on a lot of Hinge and Tinder dates, one-on-one blind dates where I realized how tiresome and transactional the dating industry had become. I just wanted to go on a fun night out with my friends, meet people organically, and there wasn't a mechanism to do that. So a friend and I founded Swap, and it was the very first time where I felt so excited to jump out of bed in the morning and work because I was so excited about the idea of putting something influential into other people's hands. And that's when I realized that um, I wasn't necessarily interested in government. I was interested in influencing people's behavior and creating systems that create positive change. And actually, one of the biggest ways to do that is through brand and growth and creating brands that people consume that have a massive positive influence on how they behave. And now I can kind of draw that dot. At the time, it was a squiggly. I was like, what do I do? Where can I? That's what I enjoy, but where do I find that? And I didn't know how to find it. So I went to McKinsey, which is where it felt like there was a lot of optionality and a great brand, corporate brand, and blue chip CV tick. Went to McKinsey for a couple of years and ended up working a lot in consumer fashion and luxury. I got to go work for a luxury fashion player. I got to work for a really big global sportswear brand, some of the biggest CPG companies, CEOs that were transitioning, and we would help them on their capital markets days, their strategies for the business. And then kind of a couple of years in was like, okay, this is great, but I don't want to just do strategy. I want to operate. I miss building and I miss operating. And I also had an itch. I don't know if anyone's felt this. It feels like we have a very international audience, but I had an itch to get out of my comfort zone and get out of London and have a career experience that wasn't just the company I worked at, but also was like a complete environmental switch. So I was thinking, I only speak English. Where can I go and have that like truly global experience and leave the country I've been born in? And it was America. Everyone told me I'd never get a visa. I spent 6 months applying to America, figuring out how to make it work. And I can talk in this session if it's helpful a bit about how I did that. But long story short, I managed to get a job at a company called Oddity, who are a very cool beauty tech company that added more revenue to their brands, to their three brands, than Estee Lauder combined, even though they were a 5-year-old company. They IPO'd within 5 years, and I worked there in a new venture program, creating a new brand in skincare. They had makeup and hair care, but not skincare yet. So got to work in operations and new product development. And again, like this is the generalist tack. Like I was doing things I'd never done before, like going into a biolab and working with a scientist on creating skincare formulas with no specialty in that industry, and yet could still figure it out as a generalist. So kind of it's like the theme is like the power of what a generalist can do. And did that. My visa expired, and then came back to the UK and joined Jack and Jill, which is now my current role. I'm leading growth of Jack. So I feel like I've spoken for a while, but if everyone's still following, I'll end with what Jack and Jill is and what I do. So Jack and Jill is a marketplace for people finding work to find companies. So Jill is hiring for the best startups right now, the best AI companies, and Jack is working with 250,000 as of today, brilliant talent like yourselves. And when Jack and Jill talk, they've had like 5 million conversations between each other as agents. When Jack and Jill talk, they make matches between the candidates and the companies and directly introduce you together so that you can get a job, and you just skip cold applications, you skip having to network, doom scroll, and you go straight to meeting the decision maker. And that's how I got my job. I spoke to Jack, took about 10 minutes, didn't really think much of it. And then 2 months later, got a WhatsApp message from Matt Wilson, the founder of Jack and Jill, saying, would you like to come meet us? And that afternoon, after that message from Jack, I went and met Matt and then got my job. And now I'm leading the growth of Jack, acquiring more users so that more people can have that amazing, wow, positive hiring experience like I did. So at 250,000 after just 1 year, we've raised 20 million seed. And we're now in 3 cities, London, San Francisco, and New York. And it's a marketplace where you can similarly find jobs in AI. And I'm excited to show you how that works. And it's completely free as well.
It's so wild because, like, can everyone just remember, even like a year, 2 years ago, where if we were hearing that this is possible, it just would have sounded like so far in the future. And I think this conversation is going to be particularly relevant to people who have these types of careers where a CV like makes you want to crawl under the table because you're like, what do you mean I'm going to put all of my wide-ranging, amazing, versatile experience onto one page? Like, make it make sense. And I wonder, Sophia, from your perspective of being in this AI recruitment, hiring kind of world, what is the sentiment around this like age-old debate of generalist versus specialist? How are you seeing this from your lens?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a debate and there's two sides to the story, but I'm biased. I think that generalists are the future of AI. And I don't think that the bias is just me being pompous. I think that there generally is an increasing demand for people with cross-functional skills and ability to work across domains. So the power of someone who's done history that I've learned is that you have an ability to discern and exercise judgment when the evidence isn't that clear. And a lot of the time, you're dealing with problems where you don't even necessarily know what you're solving yet. And with a toolkit like a historian who knows how to approach that and how to tell a story and how to communicate and work through lots of facts and evidence and figure out and diagnose a problem, that in itself is a toolkit that's like very, very relevant to what we're now doing in AI, where you have lots of tools at your disposal, you have dispersed facts and information about the market, and it's about putting together a narrative that can help drive the strategy forward. Like that in itself is an example of how a very generalist background and educational background can help you actually provide a lot of expertise when people are very technical and have a lot of specific skills and specific domain experience, but don't know how to necessarily bring it together. Like I guess that's one of the powers of someone who's done a generalist background. And then what we also see, like that's one way in which humanities is very helpful. What we also see is because there's now these agents that can do a lot of these workflows that are very technical, having someone who can go that level above and show a lot of EQ. This is what the Anthropic founder speaks about, is like someone who is very good at people skills and sales and stakeholder management and building relationships is more valuable because you can actually outsource a lot of these technical skills now to these incredible agents and tools that are coming up that can do a lot of the technical work for you, and then you need someone to kind of like add on the emotional layer and be that like people organizer.
Mm. One of the things, probably the biggest thing, to be honest, that people in our community, people are DMing me on LinkedIn, and I get a million emails a year about, is positioning. And people are like, I know that I'm valuable, but these roles feel so rigid. Like the roles that I'm seeing on LinkedIn or Indeed, they feel so rigid and so specialized and so narrow. And I'm wondering, how and in which ways does using something like Jack help people with that kind of career positioning?
Yeah, I think that now more titles have emerged that reflect what I was saying about the fact that there's less demand for specific specialist skills. So an example of that is Jack and Jill hire founding operators, and the nature of the founding operator title is like you kind of are a customer service, but you're also in product, you're also in design one day, you're also like a constantly testing on UX, you're doing lots of like you're data scientist, you're in like analyst, the strategy one day, like it's multiple different functions into one role. So and we're not the only startup that's hiring for people like that. So Jack will find you those sort of roles where it is they need someone who's cross-functional, and that might be called a founding operator. That title is becoming increasingly popular. So Jack will find you jobs like that. And I can share when I share Jack, like other titles to look out for that cover people that are like cross-domain.
That's such a good point. I think one of the things I see when people first join generalist world is because you just don't know what titles exist until someone tells you, like chief of staff, founder's associate, founding operator. There's all these titles. You don't know what to look for unless. So I'm really interested to see that when you demo Jack. One of the questions that's come through from our audience is, how did you frame your experience as a generalist for the beauty tech industry, given that you didn't have any experience in it? And did your consulting background help?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I really like this principle of show don't tell, where I could tell someone, here's everything I do in consulting, and try and explain to them why I think I could add value. But it is very hard for people that are hiring to understand that because something like consulting, for example, is strategic and often not like doing. There's a bit of a taboo around like, well, how do you actually operate when you're just telling people the strategy? So the show principle is actually just to take one thing, one pain point that you know the hiring manager's actively trying to solve and show how you would solve it and impact their business KPIs. So in the example of Oddity and the beauty company, they wanted to work out which category, subcategory within skincare would be the most profitable for them to enter. Is it rosacea, eczema, or KP, which is keratitis pilaris, if I'm saying that correctly? Three different body conditions. And I presented for 45 minutes which category I thought they should enter and why. And that was an example of me showing here's how I can add value in helping you figure out your strategy and actually where you're going to create value as business versus me just telling them I'm really good at helping to do category and market sizing and helping you to figure out which products to develop, etc. versus here's a deck I've made where I can show you which category you should enter and why. Does that help answer? And I've done it on a number of occasions. So when I was job searching after I left the US and I was in London without a job, I did it for a bunch of companies that were like my target companies that I wanted to go to. And they had very different problems and like very random different functions. And I was just like, which problem do I think I could genuinely solve? And then trying to solve it also told me a lot about if I'd enjoy the job, because I was like, if I'm not enjoying this pitch, I'm probably not going to enjoy the work. Um, and then I would show, yeah, I'd show them how to go about it.
I feel like we need to underline that. If I'm not enjoying this pitch, I'm probably not going to enjoy the work. There is some serious truth in that. There's been a really great question come through, which I'm curious about how you guys are thinking about this. The question is, it's hard to show EQ, so like emotional intelligence, because CVs are so performance based. How do you think about tackling that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think that's the power of trying to move away from screening tools that are just looking at CVs and keywords and scanners. So if I tell you a bit more about Jack, so Jack is an agent who you have a call with, and you can explain a lot about yourself and your experience and um, your skills that are interpersonal and where you've demonstrated EQ. And he will pick up on all of that context when matching you with companies. Whereas if it was a CV you were just spamming out, yeah, for sure, it's really hard to explain your EQ and your experience to do things beyond like a technical keyword. Whereas with Jack, who you have a call with and explain that to, we have much richer context on those skills that you have, and we can feed that into the jobs that you match with and get intros to.
Amazing. I'm gonna do a just a like really quick run through of a couple of product questions. I'm kind of going to group them. They should be quite quick answers, just so people have a sense. Number one, is Jack mostly focused in the US and the UK, or is it useful for other countries too, e.g., the Netherlands?
Um, yeah, so Jack right now will directly introduce you only to companies in London, San Francisco, and New York, because that is where we are currently like going to market on both sides. However, Jack is an agent that will search 15 million jobs a day to find matches for you, regardless of where you are. So if you're looking for a job in Munich, he will find jobs in Munich for you and he'll email you them. You can just respond back by email what you think and he'll tailor his recommendations. That you can do anywhere in the world. There's no like city specific onboarding required, but you won't get direct introductions to companies. And this will make more sense when I do the demo, but you won't get direct introductions to companies unless you're in the US and London.
Okay. Do you know how many matches have been made through Jack and Jill?
It's a good question. We make quite a few matches a day now. So I don't want to make up the number on the top of my head, but it's it's in the hundreds a week. We make over like hundreds of matches a week.
That's amazing. Hundreds of people getting a job without using the traditional CV. Okay, we can come back to some product questions. There's some really fantastic, like tactical questions coming up. So, one of them is how do you apply for quote unquote generalist roles, for example, the chief of staff, when you don't have that exact title in your previous experience?
Yeah, nice. I'm going to share my screen on this one. I think it hints to the point I was sharing earlier about show don't tell, if everyone can see my screen. And I'm happy to plug this article. But so I created this slide when I was applying to a company called Fixer. It was part of a deck where what I don't know if people relate to this, where I messaged the founder on LinkedIn. I got a response saying, yeah, let's meet. We then met, had a coffee, and then didn't get a response. Nothing really came of it. I felt like he just didn't like. I think he liked me, but he just didn't know where to place me. Like he was like, okay, this person's smart. Like she's got a good background, but like, where would she actually go in my company? Like she hasn't got tech. She's not an engineer. She's not a salesperson. She's not a marketer. She's not like who I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a chief of staff right now. So like, where do I put her? That was kind of the the ongoing struggle I had with my job search. The other things I experienced were like you could do marketing, but the salary was like quite tough. Or, for example, they just basically were saying, but you could only do marketing. And I'd be like, oh, but I like marketing, but not enough to just like only do that. So little like things like that were just like quite frustrating. So I changed my approach and I created this pitch where um, I found it a really helpful way to like show to the founder quickly over WhatsApp like where he could place me in his business. So on the left, what you're seeing here is where I thought, okay, what is the number one problem this founder is facing? So in this case, like they just really wanted to hire more excellent engineers. And they were like, right now, our brand isn't attracting excellent engineers, and we're finding it really hard to get the right talent through the door. That was the problem. And then I was like, okay, but like I've never worked in talent before. I've never worked in HR, but I actually think I know how I could help them solve that because I have worked in private equity where you're basically looking at target companies and looking for companies to acquire. How is that any different for acquiring talent? You're like acqui-hiring. So I was like, here is a 30, 60, and 90-day plan of what I would do if you hired me. In the first 30 days, I would do this. Then I would like collect data of 50 target candidates. I would then initiate warm intros. I would just get speaking to them. And then I'd also like improve your branding and your comms. Here's content calendar, comms plan. I would then talk about the next 30 to 60 days and then 60 to 90, like very tactical actions that I could just immediately start doing. And he could be like, okay, now I see the value of Sophia, why I would hire her. Here's what she would actually do. Doesn't really matter what the title is, what the role is, but I need someone to do this work. And by 90 days, I can decide exactly what function to place her in. And then on the right hand side, I explained, I know I've never worked in HR, I've never worked in talent before, but actually, what you're trying to solve is a very interesting problem where you do need a generalist because it cuts across not just hiring, but branding and comms and internal culture. And how do you onboard those people? How do you assess the right people to acquire, acqui-hire as talent? And so I mapped that on the right with I was like, here's my experience in private equity that maps to looking at the right targets. Here's my experience in co-founding an app that helps you realize that I will be very entrepreneurial and I'm good at branding. Here's where I've done something at McKinsey where I manage 20 people. This proves that I can work with technical people. I know how to work with engineers, and so I can help them on board. I can understand how to like look for that kind of talent. Here's events I've run, so here's how I can do community building. So just that like why me also just translates like some very spotty random experience from events to startup founding to McKinsey into a like it's actually why I'm perfect for this role because you don't want just another HR person that's going to be able to maybe help you hire. You want someone who's going to help you fix the entire bottleneck behind why you're not hiring the right people. So that was a bit of a spiel, but that's how I went about kind of in that situation, showing and not telling and reframing my CV for what actually is a chief of staff role. Like that is kind of a chief of staff title, but I didn't go by titles. I just went by like a 30 to 60, 90-day plan.
I love it. And what we can do is we can get that link and share it in the post-event email so everyone can go and download that and noodle on it a bit longer. And just to like plus one what Sophia said, I had a very, very similar experience where my previous job, the one before Generalist World, the one that started all of this, I met with the CEO. We hit it off. She wanted to hire me, but she had no idea where to put me. She was like, I don't know where you fit. Like, seems like you've got all this great stuff to bring. I don't know what to do with you. And she asked me to go and write my job description. And it was in writing that job description that I went back to her and said, um, I think it's in your best interest to not give me a job description. Like, these are the things, these are the problems I can come and solve. These are the things that are going to give me the most energy and therefore I'm going to show up my best as. And let's try it. Let's try it for, again, 90 days. And she hired me as her director of miscellaneous. So it's a bit non-traditional, it's a bit unusual, but these jobs are out there. And I think what I've learned from now helping thousands of people inside generalist world is you can spend years barking up the wrong tree and trying to convince someone of your value, and they might just not see it. They might just not understand that generalist value. Much better to spend your time with the people who are like, okay, I don't know where to place you, but let me try. I don't know where to place you, but let's take a look at this wild map you've just made me, like Sophia did. So thank you for sparking that memory. We have a bunch of
Yeah.
questions.
I
So
had a similar, just whilst you find the question really, like
yeah,
I
please
met
do.
another founder when I was looking, and we really hit it off, and she was like, you seem great, but again, like you said, you're into marketing and growth, but you're kind of just a generalist. Like, I'm not seeing enough experience in marketing and growth to give you that role. And I was like, oh, this is so frustrating because they really want to work in marketing and brand, but they wanted to hire like specific marketers for that. So, but then like we kept speaking. She was like, okay, like I do see value, like chief of staff, marketing, growth, work, brand, comms, social strategy. And then um she actually ended up coming back to me and was like, can you write me the JD? Like, you write a paragraph on what you think your JD should be, and then we'll talk again. So you could also just offer to have like 5 bullets of what you think your JD should be based on the 5 problems, whether it's hiring or social media that they're trying to solve, and then go to them with that.
Which is a perfect segue into this next question because I think this really tactical. If you can get to the point where you're in front of the CEO being like, this is the problems I can solve. The question is, how do you figure out what the problems are that the company has in the first place? Do you have any tips or advice on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And like, I was really lucky. The only reason I knew that hiring was one of their big bottlenecks at that company, for example, was because I managed to get a quick coffee chat with the founder. That's not always realistic. However, there probably is someone in the company you could try meet. Like, they don't need to be high up. They could be anyone in the company, and you could just get a sense of like what are like the current bottlenecks or the big priorities. What do you think the company needs more of, or they're lacking? That's like one way, is just try and find anyone who's willing to have a quick call. Otherwise, if it's a public big company, go to their earnings reports and have a look at what they've said their strategic priorities are. Pick one that resonates with you and make that like the pillar of your one pager. Like, your strategic priority is to meet your sustainability goals. Here's my experience that can help you do that. Here's my 30, 60, 90 day plan for sustainability, like to help you meet your sustainability goals. And the reason why I stress it being a one pager is this person like is extremely busy. I think they're going to look at it for 10 seconds, and you wanted to get it across like the value you're going to offer to lock in a first chat. I sent my one pager by WhatsApp as an image, and then he was like, okay, yeah, let's meet again, and it like encouraged him to meet me again. But he probably looked at it and was just like, okay, yeah, I can kind of figure this, I can see this now. But like, it wasn't a whole deck that he had to spend ages going through an email, because I doubt he would have even responded then.
Yeah, it's like giving someone a carrot, right? It's like you don't have to give them the whole Sunday roast, but you're like, this is the carrot that's gonna get me in the door, get my foot in the door so that I can show you my whole Sunday roast. Um, the next question is a great one. It's a really great one. I'm going to call this the messy middle question. So, do you have any advice for how to position or focus when you are in that kind of stage of career where it's like you have too much experience, but at the same time, you don't have enough direct leadership experience to get to the next level?
um It's a good question. So, and sorry, I got distracted because someone is right for flagging that, yeah, the one pager has been changed to a different Canva link. So, I'm sorry about that. However, great plug for Jack and Jill. That's fun. I will fix that link though, and I'll send you guys the right one pager. Sorry, Millie, do you mind repeating the question?
For sure. So it's the messy middle when you have too much experience, but at the same time, you don't have enough, say, direct leadership experience to get to the next level you like. And I'm also going to say, like, if anyone in the chat has, I like, feel free. This is an open space, so we can like jam on it. But if something resonates that you're like, hey, I actually have something to say here, feel free to pop in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to give maybe a controversial answer here. I think that my experience and the reason I love working in a startup is there's no like bar of experience you need to get to the next level. Like if you're doing great work in your current role, like you will see a promotion. And with AI, I'm seeing more emphasis on this word I see, like individual contributor, where it's not like you need to tick boxes and say, have done certain things in order to get seniority. It's actually like the individual contribution you're now bringing, where like managing and management isn't a necessary skill, but it's more about the direct value you do as an individual. And the reason why I went to a startup is to get rid of like processes and layers and being like in multiple reporting structures. Like that was not energizing me. And we've built Jack and Jill to help you find like those companies that will energize you because they don't prioritize what's maybe now like an outdated way of determining someone's talent, because the playing field has really leveled with people that are extremely young being able to do just as much now than people with like 20 years experience.
And a slight pivot onto personal brand. I think this comes from your experience with like brand and growth. How important do you think that personal brand is when applying for jobs?
I think that personal brand is important in the sense that it's important how you personally come across. It's important how you present yourself when you meet someone, and people will call on referrals. So when I was joining Jack and Jill, people did call my previous bosses and people that I've worked with to collect more information about me, and that is my personal brand. I don't think, however, it's important for you to have like multiple followers on social media or to be like a recognized personal name in order to work in that job. Like I work in growth and I didn't have like a social media influence. But unfortunately, I think like your personal reputation will always carry you. And so I've always left previous jobs like on very good terms, and I've had very good like managed like aim to keep very good relationships with people I've previously worked with because I know that their references will mean a lot. Um, I see a question getting a lot of +1s, so maybe I can take that one, which is how did you think your professional pedigree helped get those meetings and pitches with founders? And what do you have for folks who don't have that clear pedigree that convey the confidence? Yeah. Well, I'm not going to pretend that having brands on your CV doesn't help. Like, of course, having Cambridge and McKinsey does open doors because I got my job at Oddity because the hiring manager was ex McKinsey. And so for sure, like it definitely has helped me. However, I know lots of people that work at Jack and Jill that don't have like blue chip brands on their CV. Like one thing that our founders really, really value is someone that has shown they can be scrappy and operate. And actually, going to McKinsey was a disadvantage and a taboo I had to work against because founders would say to me, like, oh, it's not always sexy working in a startup. Like you could be packing boxes till midnight one day and like just shipping off parcels. And I had to like prove that I get that and I know how to operate, regardless of the fact that I've maybe been in like an ivory tower. Um, and a lot of the engineers that we hire, like their experience has just been founding and consulting and doing their own thing, like building their own projects with AI and showing they can build these awesome cool things now, vibe coding and creating projects where they just were like completely self-driven. And our founders like value that just as much as they would value a brand, especially with the way the labor market is shifting and the way like skills are shifting. um and I think it's actually now like a big threat and issue for people coming from McKinsey and consulting backgrounds because it's actually a very different skill set that's maybe not that relevant anymore in the job market. Like learning how to build sites on Lovable and how to use Coworker and create agents is just as valuable as how to make slides now with McKinsey.
Mm. And if you want to learn more about Lovable, we're going to be having a session later in the week. Hope to see many of you there. And on this note, which I think we're kind of talking about this word that gets thrown around a lot, which is like future proofing. It's something that I feel a lot. It's like, okay, how do I future proof myself? From your experience in the recruitment industry, how do you recommend, how do you think about future proofing your skills?
I think that ultimately now to future proof your skills, it's okay, but let me start with it's really scary. Like no one really knows. There's a lot of uncertainty, and the labor market is is changing a lot in ways where millions of people might be displaced, and we don't know yet if AI is going to have a positive or negative impact on the labor market. A lot of people say negative, and that's really scary. So how do you quote unquote future proof yourself? Two things. One, this is why I'm very bullish on generalists and why I think it's a great time to be a generalist, because I think that being generalist gives you an ability to work across functions, like we spoke about, across domains, tell stories, demonstrate emotional intelligence, communication skills. That will become more and more valuable now that we can outsource a lot of technical work. A lot of what we've spoken about as a team is like, as the marginal cost of building product goes to zero, as in it's very much more easier to create software, what skills are more necessary? And actually, I believe it's distribution, like knowing how to create sticky user bases, how to acquire people, how to grow, how to create brand, how to distribute. And a lot of that is a generalist toolkit, like being able to take something very technical and complex and translate it to non-technical people, and also grow it through multiple different channels and work across different channels. So I think future proofing is stay generalist, stay nimble and flexible and able to work across such different functions and environments. That's one way to future proof. And the second is just, I'm also trying to do this and it's really hard, but like I just keep trying to learn what I can do better with AI, and trying to like pick up cool tips and tricks. And it's fun. Like there's areas of work that I'm just generally passionate about, and it's fun working out what's now possible, especially as a generalist, where I would never have been able to do marketing. I would have never got a marketing job before if it wasn't for AI, because I was too generalist. But now I can apply my generalist skills, use AI to become more technical where I need to be, to upskill myself in how to do some of the technical marketing stuff, and yeah, be able to be an AI marketer, which I never would have been able to do before.
Mm. There's a lot of quotes that I want to just pull out from here. How to future-proof, be more generalist. There's been a question that's been asked a couple of different ways, and I think it's a great one. And it's around like, how do you actually get in front of people? Like, I, I'm sure we all have a LinkedIn inbox, which is just like pinging with pictures and like, help. And so, do you have any advice on kind of having that moment where someone says, yes, I will take a coffee chat with you. Yes, I will come and meet you for lunch. Yes, I will get on a Zoom call. What's kind of worked for you?
Yeah, I the show don't tells really worked for me. Like just having that one pager that translates my experience, and just being really like, I can't over explain how important it is in this industry, actually just being a good communicator and being able to really just break down your value, what you translate your experience. Like a lot of founders might don't know what McKinsey was, or like what you actually do at McKinsey. Like you have to break it down really easily for them and just say, like, and with any corporate or generalist background, like, this is an example of a project I've actually led, and here's how it can translate into something in your business. That from to, where you say, I actually led a project on how this company could move its headquarters from London to New York, like very random McKinsey project I did. Here's how it actually translates into a problem you're facing, and what a similar thing I could do in your business, which is not about moving city, it's more about another org topic, but it's just like a translation of the same skills. And I think you just got to like do 3 bullets, 3 to 5 bullets, or put it on a really simple page, not too much detail, and just send it as an image. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, I can forward a message I use when I'm outreaching on LinkedIn. That's like my 3 bullets of what I've done before. And it's no longer super punchy, direct, and try and copy that communication style.
Love. And we can get that and also add it to the post-event email to make it easy peasy for folks. Two quick Jack and Jill questions, and then it'll be really awesome to get the demo so people can actually see
Yeah.
what this looks like in action. The first is does Jack and Jill only help with jobs in like the tech industry, or do they also cover jobs in academia, NGOs, nonprofits, scale-ups?
I'm going to save that one for the demo if that's okay. I think it will get answered
Yep,
better.
you the boss. Second question, is Jack and Jill only for full-time roles, or do you also work with companies looking for freelance, project-based, or fractional talent?
Okay, let's answer both on the demo. I think that it would be the best way.
To the demo.
Well, let's go. And someone just asked, what is the cost? So Jack is completely free, and I'm logged into my Jack dashboard now. So let's see. Jack's listening. Hey, Jack.
Hey, Sophia. Good to have you back. I
Can,
see you're logged into your dashboard. What's on your mind?
can everyone hear Jack? Can everyone hear him?
I can hear you loud and
Okay,
clear.
Jack can hear me. I
What can I?
assume everyone else can, but Millie
Yes,
shout if no one else. Okay, cool. Jack, just a bit of context. I'm actually here with 350 people right now, so we have a bit of an audience. But they would love to understand more about how you work. Can you explain to them what you do?
absolutely. It's great to see so many people interested in how we can level up careers. To put it simply, I'm your dedicated career agent. Think of me as your personal mentor and advocate, focused entirely on your next career move. Whether you're looking for a new role, considering a pivot, or just want to grow where you are, I'm here to help you figure it out and make it happen. My goal is to take as much of the heavy lifting off your plate as possible. This means understanding what you truly want. We'll work together to define your ideal role, company, and compensation. Essentially, your search brief.
And
Finding
Jack,
the right opportunity.
sorry to cut you off, but can you search for freelancer roles as well as full-time roles?
That's a great question. My primary focus is on full-time roles, as that's where most of our matching and candidate support is structured. However, if you come across a freelance opportunity you're interested in, I can certainly help you prepare your application materials and strategize your approach. What kind of freelance work are you looking to do? That might help me understand if there are adjacent full-time roles that could also be a good fit.
No, that's really helpful, Jack. I'll come back to that on the freelance roles. Just another final clarifying question. Can you find jobs outside of tech, or is it only in tech?
Another excellent question. My core strength lies in the tech industry, where I have the most robust data and network. However, I can also help with roles in adjacent fields or industries, especially if they have a strong digital or operational component. If you have a specific industry in mind outside of tech, tell me a bit about it, and I can let you know if it's something I can effectively support. My matching capabilities are most precise within tech, but my ability to help you prepare and strategize is quite transferable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Jack. Okay, let's kick off with a job. I'm trying to find a new one, and I want it to be in New York. I really want to go back to the city. I would love to work in growth in New York at one of the best AI startups there, but I'm obsessed with fashion. Can you see if you can find me a job in New York in fashion and growth? I'm gonna end the call now so I can get back to my demo, but if you could kick off the search, that would be great.
All right, Sophia. So to recap, you're looking for growth roles in New York City with a strong preference for the fashion industry. You also mentioned wanting to return to Sydney, so I'll keep that in mind as a potential long-term goal, but focus on NYC for now. I can definitely search for growth roles in New York. The fashion industry aspect adds an interesting layer. While my direct matching is strongest in tech, I can certainly look for companies that bridge fashion and tech or growth roles within fashion adjacent tech companies. Since you need to jump off for your demo, I'll initiate a search based on your criteria. Growth roles in New York City with a focus on the fashion industry. I'll let you know what I find in our next conversation.
Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome, Sophia. I'll get that search started and be in touch.
Okay, I'm just going to jump back to the demo, but that's a bit of a hint of Jack. And when you chat to him completely free, I'll put a link here in the chat. You will have a coaching call where he will share you can share what you're passionate about. He'll ask you questions about what you're looking for and get to know you better. You can do it for like a minute, you could do it for 5 hours, it's however long you want. Just give him some context on what you're looking for so he can start searching. And then, as you saw, I did with the kick off the search. So he now will email me jobs, and I'll show you an example. He'll email me jobs, he'll send them in the chat, he'll put them in my dashboard, he'll even send them me on WhatsApp if I want to. It's all part of the onboarding. But I'm gonna get back. I've just put the link in here in the chat to Jack. He's completely free to chat to. I'm gonna get back to showing you more about the product. So you guys have seen how the call happens, and then okay, so we've just discussed. You guys can see my dashboard. Next steps. Okay, close. This is my call summary. I had a call with Jack, and now he's going to search. Hey Jack, send me the jobs in the chat. And then here's my dashboard on the right. So here's where he'll add my jobs, review jobs, and I can say whether I'm interested in them or not. And he'll learn from every feedback you give. So this one, chief of staff, not for me. I'm going to say it's not for me because it's in San Francisco. The location doesn't work for me. Skip this role. This one, let's say the same, not for me, maybe because of the right seniority. He's learning from this feedback that you give, so he can help find better ones for you and present you new ones every day. This one, let's say, cool, track that one for me. Or this one, really cool, track that one. And here's where I will track in my dashboard. These are ones I've saved that I found through Jack. These are ones I've applied to. And then these are the ones I'm in the process for. So I can remember all the different jobs. Because one of the biggest things I found when I was applying was I just had to create this like Google sheet myself of lots of different roles and track them. And then what's awesome is he knows, okay, Sophia's in the process for Saltbox. She actually has an interview coming up. Like, we should practice for this interview. So you can jump back on the call. I'd like to do a mock interview. And he will now role play the hiring manager and do an interview with me to prep. So if I join the call.
Great. Let's jump right into this mock interview for the Saltbox role. I'm stepping into the shoes of their hiring manager now. Saltbox is at an interesting pivot point, scaling beyond the early startup phase. Given your background in founding stage growth, I want to dig into how you'd handle this environment. To start, given our focus on workspace solutions for SMBs, how do you envision AI augmented growth actually moving the needle for us? What's your high-level vision there?
It's a really good question. I think AI will move the needle because producing content, people have higher abilities to produce content, and there's going to be a bigger attention deficit. So being able to produce cooler content with AI that's more differentiated and that can stand out on people's algorithms will move the needle. Was that a good answer, Jack? I can't tell. Maybe I hesitated.
It's a solid starting point, Sophia. I appreciate the focus on differentiation in a crowded landscape. That's a very real challenge for SMBs today. Since we're aiming for a director level signal, here's my quick feedback. Keep the focus on the how and the business outcome. Instead of just more content, think about how AI specifically reduces customer acquisition cost or improves the quality of leads for those SMBs. Let's keep the momentum going. Tell me about a time you led a GTM motion.
That's a much better response, Jack. What would you have said to the question?
That's fair. You want to know what a director level answer sounds like. If I were in your shoes, I'd bridge the content gap with the business model. I'd say something like, for SMBs, the real friction isn't just content volume, it's lead conversion. My vision for AI augmented growth is twofold. First, using generative models to automate personalized outreach that feels bespoke, which drives higher conversion at lower cost. Second, I'd leverage predictive AI.
Okay, that's
existing data.
Yeah, cool. Okay. I'm just going to end the call, guys. I don't want to go too soon, but go over this. But basically, you can just keep going and going. And the reason I love this skill that Jack has is because as a generalist, it is really hard to upskill in what a certain company might be looking for, because some companies are quite niche, and just having this practice and this live rep building like really helps, and it would have really helped me. Like, I wish I had this when I was applying, because I honestly didn't really prep interviews. I just ended up doing the live thing, like actually interviewing with companies, and then I would either not get the job because it was like a practice round, or I'd ruin my reputation with them because I like didn't know how to frame myself, my value and my position myself. And I hate this advice of like the best way to prep for interviews is just to get some reps in, because then you're kind of like wasting people's time doing those interviews and like also just ruining job opportunities. So being able to just practice with Jack is like honestly a life changer. And it's not just like role playing the hiring manager. If you go to coaching here, you can do many different types of coaching calls. So working through like what it is that you're going to enjoy, like your career goals, planning your next move, reflecting on why you've not found a job yet, or honestly, like I just felt really anxious at one point in my job search process, like really I was so ambitious, but then really stuck because I was like, why am I so ambitious and have so much energy and yet nothing is materializing? Like, should I just give up on being ambitious and just compromise on taking a job I'm not that passionate about? And I wish I had a coach, but a coach would cost like £300 an hour to talk through something that didn't feel like, yeah, I didn't really want to pay for to like talk through that anxiety. And I could have got a therapist, but getting a therapist also was not like what I needed. I just wanted a bit of life coaching. And Jack honestly has such a human life experience in talking you through that like feeling of being anxious and stuck in your job search. Like it is a really horrible feeling. And having this like free coaching and like way just to like plan it out with someone for 24/7, like at 4 a.m. if you wanted to, is really helpful. And yeah, so not just tech, you could prepare for lots of like different types of interviews, consulting interviews where you have to do market sizing or case interviews. Um, you could do technical interviews. Sometimes you have to do a bit of coding. You could do a coding interview, or you could even just like send a JD that you found online or type of interview you want to prep and send it to him as the conversation goal, and he'll use that as his brief and just get going, which is what Claude and ChatGPT can't do because you're behind a chat box and you're hiding behind a text box. Whereas when you have to speak out loud, like it forces you to really practice. And the last thing I'll say on that, where I think it's really important to practice out loud, is negotiating your salary or asking for a raise. So when I got jobs like in the last 5 years, like I've never negotiated my salary, or if I've tried, I've just absolutely failed within the first 5 minutes. Honestly, I've never practiced it, and now you can like actually practice live, and Jack will be like really tough and rebuttal you and be like, that's not a great response, Sophia, here's how you could better respond, and he'll give you benchmarks. So say I say to Jack like I've got offered 60K with 0.5% equity. He'll send me benchmarks on how good that salary is for that role based on what other people are getting paid anonymously for, based on like live job listings and data he has through Jill, because Jill is the one hiring for the companies. Coming back now to the chat.
Wow, 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 wow. We are nearly at time, but I can see there's still loads of questions coming through. And so, what I would suggest is we will drop Sophia's LinkedIn, RIP your inbox. But any extra questions, feel free to direct them straight to Sophia. And I just wanted to name that the whole reason we're running this summer school is so that you can get really good at online tools so that you can spend more time offline. That's our whole shtick. We're like, we want you guys to be out there touching grass. And this, if you're on a job search, I really hope that it can make it a bit less tough in this economy and in this market. And hopefully you can spend more time outdoors this summer. We will be sending the recording, and if there's anything else you need, just reach out to us. I believe Edja has already sent. There's a little LinkedIn post, and the challenge is to head on over to that link post, leave a comment. It can be a takeaway, it could be something you learned. But my challenge is to go and then like scroll through the comments and find someone. Maybe it's someone who's in a similar industry or has a similar job, or you're like, what is that job? And say hi. Say hi. See if you can connect with one person from this call, because I guarantee there's some really interesting folks that join these calls. And I'm so grateful for everyone showing up and spending the last hour with us. And Sophia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, just a reminder that Jack is free. Anyone can speak to him and get help on their job searching and getting coaching in the way that I did. I didn't get a chance to show you the great fashion jobs in New York he found me, but I promise if you give him a brief, he'll email you them straight away and you will find yours. I dropped a link in the chat to Jack, but I'll just send it again. And just to explain quickly, because I saw there was a message on who Jill is. So Jill's the one working with companies. So when someone is hiring through Jill, and they're looking for someone like you, Jack and Jill will directly connect you on WhatsApp. So Jill is the one working with companies, and then Jack's working with candidates like you guys, and you'll get direct intro requests with awesome AI startups that are hiring for generalist profiles. So that's the best way to get hired. And then in the meantime, Jack will find you jobs, and the link is in the chat.
Yay! Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you at the next class. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.